Hey there. We're going. Hey there. So this is another episode. My guest today is here to talk about gaming, movies, and pop culture because that's always fun. I think the glimmering harpy herself, Raya,
Hi, yeah. Good to meet you, Lorenzo. My name's Raya.
Raya. Hey, sorry about that.
Hey.
Same here. Same to meet you. Great to meet you. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Just got home. Busy day. I had Veterans Day off today, or so yeah, I got a head start on some chores around the house and some errands. So pretty boring day so far. How about you?
I'll say, yeah, same here. I like how you get a day off and it's just to do chores and other stuff. That's what days off are for.
Pretty much.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I know that exact feeling, and I mean, yeah, and tomorrow's my niece's birthday. That's the only reason I remember why it's Veterans Day. So I'm kind of like trying to, help my sister with any sort of birthday obligations there.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. No, but I'm glad you're off. Yeah, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about gaming just because I know that's kind of the content I've seen you kind of push out, and I don't know. I rarely get to talk to anyone. That's weird. I know I see a lot of people gaming, but it's kind of weird to talk to people about it. I feel like no one really talks about it anymore. I don't
That's so
know.
weird because I guess my feed is showing stuff that I interact with the most. So all I see is people who talk about video games, but I don't see
Uh
what other people's feeds look like. So yeah, this is news to me.
That's funny. Maybe it's just my algorithm. Maybe I'm just seeing all the terrible things. I don't know. Maybe it just knows how I feel or who the people I follow. It's always about like, but everyone it feels like everyone's so negative about everything nowadays. Like any like the Marvels movie that's coming out or the Ghostbusters trailer or video games even like when Spider-Man 2 came out, I know they were like, "Ooh, uh this is such a short game, da da da," and I just feel like everyone's so critical nowadays. Do you see that a lot, or is it do you have another opinion on it?
I do see it, but I do think some of it is justified. Like, especially for the amount of money and how little amount of content that we get for what we pay. I
Hmm.
think it is totally within everyone's right to, have some issues with, the products that they, put up money for. But I do sometimes feel that a lot of like the complaints, let's say, about the new Spider-Man games, for example. There have been some like the Miles Morales game or the first Spider-Man game that were really well received, and now other folks are kind of comparing the latest follow-up to it, which is totally within the right to do so. It makes sense. It's this next entry in the series. I guess what I personally default to is like I'm just glad that we have more content to enjoy. Like, something is like being stoked that that there's still new stuff to, experience. And then I get that other people are like, "No, I don't even want to waste my time with this if that's all they're going to give us." And I'm like, "Okay, that's fair too." So I don't really have um I don't let other people's, experiences, good or bad, try to influence mine. I try to experience the product for myself or have my own opinions on it based off of my own experiences with it.
Yeah, it's what is it? It's like a ice cream shop, right? That's a good analogy. Everybody has a different flavor. That's the fun of it. Someone might like chocolate, some might like vanilla. It just depends on your own taste. Also, well, I was gonna talk about gaming. When did you first start gaming? I'd saying I'm acting like, oh, well, you're a girl. So girls don't really game. That I remember when I was a kid. That's how it was. Like it was like, oh, girls don't really game. No, when did you like first start playing games? Did Was it someone that handed you a controller, or did you see something like on YouTube or TV or something that got you into gaming?
Yeah, so it was in the mid 90s or so. So let's see, I was maybe around 5 or 6. And I want to say the first console that I have like really like solid memories experiencing was the PS1.
Hmm.
So that is the console that a lot of my family members had. So I would go to their house, like my cousin's house, and play Tekken, Spyro, Crash. Some of them had and a Nintendo 64s as well. And I didn't have one personally, so I'd go to their house and play Yoshi Story, Mario Kart, Ocarina of Time. So that's how I experienced those titles too. So yeah, very much in that, what is it, like 96 to 98 or so is
Hmm.
where, like, my formative years of, I really, really like video games, happened. And I still uh default back to like that time period of like, I don't know why games back then were just better than than what we get now. So I guess I'm like going back to that original question you asked about, do people sort of like over complain? And then I kind of feel myself saying like, I get it, because like I have this idea of what I like, and
Uh-huh.
nothing else can really touch that, pillar, or like that, like that I have established for that concept of what I think is like peak gaming. so
Hmm.
so yeah, I will say that like I have the very same like sentiment when it comes to games that I personally like have an emotional connection to. And in that specific like time period is where, like, I tend to, kind of go back and see a lot of like the games that I'm into right now have a lot of similarities to those games that I was into, like, what is it, like 25 or so years ago. So, yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, a lot of what's old is new again. I know, like I grew up in 80. Well, I didn't grow up. I was born in 87, so I grew up around the same time, the 90s, and had kind of the NES, the Super Nintendo, the older ones, and then the PS1. I did really love too. It's just funny too. I think about like the games I see now, like on YouTube, where they're like, "Oh, the hardest games to ever have existed," or like we played them as kids and without any game guides really or anything. Like we didn't have YouTube. I wish we had YouTube back then to see walkthroughs and these secrets or that secrets, and it trips me out how like now I feel like I played a game the other day and I couldn't get past the puzzle. I had to look it up on YouTube. It's just like this is hard.
Yeah, man. So like I would sometimes go back and watch old Angry Video Game Nerd episodes, and he was one of the first YouTubers I ever got into too, like hardcore, like just binge watching all his episodes. And I'm like, damn, this dude like grew up in that same era where you did, where like there were no like what little guides existed were in like, magazines you had to like go out and pay for, or like
Hmm.
these mail order, you know, like printed, things that were very much like you have to know it exists in order to go
Uh-huh.
and pursue it.
Or you
So
had to
it
find the buddy at your school who had it written down in a notebook and stuff like that.
Yes, exactly. So it was very much just like, yeah, you're on your own as far as like, even if you can't get past like a specific dungeon or boss, or you don't know like a button mapping strat, then like, yeah, you're gonna go your whole life without knowing it pretty much. But it's cool that after all these years, like I said, AVGN and then all these other uh, retro gaming enthusiast channels that I kind of, went down the rabbit hole and started watching as well. They surfaced all that information for us to be able to finally go back and like redeem our childhoods low key. And I really like it a lot. I will say that there was like, I kind of get that feeling of like, I kind of like that mystery sort of like lingering in my brain from when I was a kid, and now that I solved it, I kind of feel like, now what? It's
Yeah.
like finding out the meaning of life. It's like, okay, cool, but like, now what? We're still
Yeah.
here.
It's like, oh, we know the answer. Okay, there's no reason the mystery solved. Like that's it. Yeah, no, exactly.
Yes.
And then even back then too in games, they didn't have patches, so there were like glitches that could have stopped you from doing something too, and you just thought it was part of the game or something, and turns out like, oh, this is a game breaking glitch, or this will mess up. You're not supposed to do this there or that, and I'm like, what? Like, how are we supposed to know that?
No, dude, like, okay, so the same mindset that you have about, like, yeah, back then games that were broken were just broken. I'm
Yeah.
of the mindset of, like, no, back then games were just complete, like that you didn't have to, like, worry about like DLC or updating it or patches and uh, pay to play mechanics and things like that. I was
Hmm.
it was a much simpler time, and it was a much more like um I guess it was more fulfilling for me because I had very smaller access to games than I do now. Like a lot of people, I'm sure. Like I didn't really have a whole lot of access to games outside of like, you know, some key mascot based games like like I mentioned, Spyro, Crash Bandicoot, Legend of Zelda, Mario Kart, Yoshi's Story. Like those are all ones that a lot of people also have like core memories with. But outside of that, not necessarily like too much access to those other titles in those libraries. So what I did get access to, sort of like those being complete experiences of their own. Again, it's that pillar that I built up and put all these games on a platform for, where not many other experiences in gaming can really touch nowadays. Because
Hmm.
I just yeah, that's what I feel like. Again, is like peak gaming. Like, yeah, that was a complete experience. Those are like these monoliths in like gaming history that I just sort of like have um in my brain. So yeah, I just
No, no.
wanted to,
I'm
yeah.
absolutely, I absolutely have the same thoughts for like, because back then, and again, is I keep saying back then, you bought a game, or you're a kid, so you're not really like we are now, where we make our own money. We could buy any game that we theoretically want to, or demos were kind of like hard to come by back then. You had to buy a magazine to maybe get a demo disc, but like if you bought a game or your parents bought you a game, you had to like play that game. Like that was your only game. And I remember like playing back and forth like Diddy Kong Racing, like getting that game and just beating the crap out of it, beating everything, playing it over and over, just being so good at it. And it's stuff like that one. And man, I remember this old Game Boy game, WarioWare versus Bomberman, and just it's like it's a good game. But I remember just beating it and being so good at it, where you could just beat it blindfold at a certain point. But it's just because like, oh, we're just buying you this one game, you better like it, and that's you beat it, you know.
Yeah, definitely. It was let me see. I'm trying to think of a game where I just like I had no choice but to like it. Actually, that was so my favorite game series ever, Spyro the Dragon. I actually got that as a Christmas gift, and I didn't want it originally. I didn't know that it was going to be as fun and enjoyable
Mm,
as I thought it would be. I had never really heard of it. I've never seen people in my family play it, and yeah, so I had no choice but to keep it. So I went ahead and opened it, played it on my PS1, and I just got into it. Like, the music is so immersive. It was fully like three full 360 motion, real world exploration, and environments that sort of reacted around you as well. We've seen that in other games as well too, but like I felt really immersed in that game. So yeah, that was a game where like originally as a kid, because I had so little knowledge about like who this character was. It came out in like late 1998, so that was like those years where I kind of had a feeling of like, okay, yeah, I know who Crash Bandicoot is. I know who, like, Sonic and Mario are, and Link from Legend of Zelda. So yeah, like, who's Spyro. So like, yeah, he and I saw that there was a demo for Crash Bandicoot in the Spyro game as well. So I got to play like part of like the new Crash Bandicoot game at the time. I think it was Crash Bandicoot Warped. Yeah, so
yeah.
like I played a
Mm.
demo of that, and yeah, I just got more and more into Spyro, and it was also one of those games where because I didn't have access to like a strategy guide or any knowledge on where to get in game, or how to get help on specific areas in a map or something that I'm stuck on. A lot of those levels ended up not being completed when I was a kid until maybe later on as an adult, when I could go and watch someone else, through do a walkthrough of the same map I was stuck on for all those years. So yeah, just thought I'd throw that out there.
No, no, I've been there too. Recently, like with games like Resident Evil, I never beat the like I had the GameCube remake. I never had the original like for PlayStation. I just didn't like scary games back then as a kid. I just would play like Tony Hawk and Pac Man and stuff. Driver. I really liked Driver when it came out. It was a good game. Hard as heck, but I remember beating it. It was fun. Uh, but yeah, now like being able to just see people beat a whole game and like nothing, like even the speedrunners, like uh, basically tear apart a game from 1 to 0. It's crazy. YouTube's crazy. I know there's any. Do you think of any games that you've played that you wish like have gotten that would get more attention? Because I know, like for instance, like my niece is really into Professor Layton, and it has like a lot of attention, like in Japan and stuff. But she's like, "Why don't people like this more? Why don't people like this more?" And I'm like, "I don't know. It's a good series, but is there anything you think should come back, or you play and no one like knows about it? You're like the only one."
Hmm. I'm trying to think because I was gonna say maybe like Cooking Mama or some other sort sim game, but those are all really popular actually nowadays. Um,
I know
hmm.
when here's a story here when I always talk about well, I don't always talk about this, but there was a game on the Xbox 360 called Shadowrun, and it was at the first it was a first person shooter. That it was the very first game to ever have crossplay where you could play with Windows, so PC and Xbox 360. And then it was the first game that I've ever heard of that only had multiplayer. It didn't have a single player campaign. So it was just like 6 maps, and it was like magic versus tech type things, multiplayer. And I remember the reviews, everyone crapping on it because it was like, this is only multiplayer for $60. And the crossplay is so weird. Mouse people on the mouse and keyboard are gonna have the advantage. And now that's like normal for the world, is like you pay $80 for a game that's only multiplayer, or free to play, quote unquote, but then you end up paying for whatever. So I always like think about that game Shadowrun, like, man, this was ahead of its time, but not in like the best way. But it was a fun game. I remember back when.
Yeah, so like back then, you're reminding me of like LAN parties. I know it's not necessarily the same thing that you're referring to, but I had friends who were like, "Oh yeah, dude, we're gonna go to have a LAN party," and everyone would just bring in their, bring in their Xboxes to people's houses and just, like, LAN it up. I guess I never
Mhm.
really got into it because I never had an Xbox console growing up. I was always like, Nintendo and PlayStation. Not necessarily because I was like that was just what was bought for me as a kid.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
every generation I would get like one console and a game, and then that would be it for like several years at a time.
Mhm.
I didn't have a PS3 though, surprisingly enough, but I ended up getting one later and as an adult. Anyway, yeah, the whole LAN party situation with like Halo and stuff like that, again, I didn't really have a whole lot of experience or exposure to that IP. So for the whole first person shooter genre, like just went way over my head. Like, I just again going back to as a kid, like I only had like exposure to very specific key titles for what limited amount of consoles I did have access to. And I'm missing a whole like generation of consoles where that genre just blew up, like PS3 and
Oh
360.
yeah.
I was not part of that, so that went over my head too. It wasn't until maybe like a year or two ago that I actually started to open up my mind a little bit more to first person shooters. I think the one that really helped me with that was Doom. I think it's because Doom is
Mm.
like very it is, what is it? It was very, for me it was very pick up and play friendly, and I didn't necessarily have to use a gun or some sort of like shooty weapon or whatever. I could just rip and tear people in first person. And for me, I was like a little worried about like, oh, my aim sucks. I don't know, like being in first person is kind of jarring for my senses, blah blah blah. But once I got into it, like Doom 2016, and then and playing gosh, what was the sequel to that? So like those two games really just, helped me, see, okay, yeah, now I see why this genre is so popular, and I see why Doom is so popular online. All these retro game enthusiasts talk about Doom like
Oh
with all this
man.
hype and praise, and now I
Hmm.
get it. I didn't play the originals yet, but yeah, the remakes, and then there was a spiritual successor to like the N64 versions of Doom called Proteus. So Proteus is from some of the developers of the older Doom games, and I played that, and I really liked it as well. So it was kind of compelling me to go back and play the older Doom games too, just because like I love that aesthetic of a 3D space, but everything is like still in pixel, graphics.
Hmm.
So yeah, I was big into that.
No, I know my buddy that does all my art for my show. He's super into Doom. Where lately, like you can play Doom and they still have servers and mods like of the old school Doom, and it's almost kind of like Minecraft where everyone makes like their own game within Doom and have your own little mod. They call them wads instead of mods, but I don't know why. But they're mods in the Doom universe, and you could play those. And he's super down the rabbit hole with that and those different mods. I know me just like you with I skipped the whole first person shooter genre too. I wasn't good at it. I was telling everyone I don't like this. It's stupid, but it's because I wasn't good at it until Gears of War came out in for the Xbox 360, and that's when I was like, oh man, this is a shooter I got into because it was just more cover based, more strategic. I don't know. I liked it more than Halo. Seemed more run and gun and the first person just like you were saying it kind of like I didn't like the way it felt, that first person view. It felt real weird. And then the third person I liked it. It felt more at home, I guess.
Yeah, no, Doom definitely helped me see the light a little bit. I'm like, okay, yeah, now I see why this genre is so popular. So, I haven't yet picked up other games that I was kind of interested in. Like, there was Overwatch, and then what was the other one? Borderlands. Those were the two, like stylistically, like they kind of align more to what I'm into, like art style wise for games
Hmm.
that I'm really into. I just haven't picked those up yet, but yeah, that those are ones that are on my list to check out as well.
And speaking of that, I was gonna say, are there any games that like you consider sort of like art? Like I want to say like almost movie like because I don't know if you ever played Bioshock. Have you ever played Bioshock? Oh man, it to me, I could name a few that like video games that moved you, right? And so, like Bioshock's a first person shooter. It's got a great story to it. Uh, Part two has an even better story. So it made me cry. Games like Life is Strange. I don't know if you ever played that. Story wise, a game. Mass Effect, Heavy Rain, like those.
I'm familiar with all of those, yeah, but
Yeah, no,
I haven't
like
played
real.
them.
Okay, well they're real cinematic, right? And I was wondering if like any games that hit you that hard where you were like, man, this made me feel like emotional, almost like a movie or like a memory, like a moment.
Hmm. Gosh, I feel like a lot of pressure is on me right now.
I'm trying
um,
I'm trying to think of what other game recently I played. Have you heard of or played Omori?
no, I haven't. What's
Oh
that?
my, it's like in the style of do you know what is it? Earthbound? Like a
Yeah.
RPG, like it's like Earthbound, but the story is just I don't want to spoil it, and but it's so depressing, and it's about depression and like suicide and guilt and all that. And I don't know, it's just the story hit me so hard, and I thought I was playing a friendly, cool little Earthbound. Oh, even Earthbound, if I've seen gameplay of that story's pretty messed up too. Near the end of it, when you start fighting like the main boss or something, it's like a I don't know, it's supposed to be a representation of the future self, and then you fight your baby self. I don't know, but I'm paraphrasing here. But yeah, is there any like I don't know if you've currently like the Spider-Man or any of the Switch games where like it affected you. You're like, man, this could be like just as good as a movie. I know a lot of games are like that now, but like where you felt it, emotionally.
Hmm. I think I'm gonna go with one of the recent RPGs I've been playing was um it's in the Atelier. Yeah, it's one of these JRPGs where you're gathering items, creating spells, and going on quests, and then there's side quests, and you're building up a team of two other characters who travel along with you. Basically, pretty standard, RPG mechanics. But the story itself is it has like this ticking clock, mechanic. So there's a lot of urgency where
Mm,
you're tasked with you're a student in this this school where you have a few different like magic tests, I guess, that you have to pass through every semester. And your character is kind of a goofball, kind of a screw up. They're not really taking their studies seriously, so they get scolded all the time. And then you try to prove them wrong, but prove people who don't believe in you wrong by being the best that ever was, and passing all your tests and stuff like that. So it's on the player to be resourceful with their time, as well as like fulfill all these quests. And for me, the I guess simple stories like that tend to hit home a little bit more for me, especially like when I'm in the middle of playing it. And I tend to see characters that remind me of people in my life or people from my past, where I'm like, okay, I can see myself more in the protagonist's shoes a little bit. Like they're, you know, either they're being gaslit by this one character who's saying that they're not good enough to pass this specific class in order to pass the semester and be taken seriously. And there's another character who is just like super like empathetic and friendly and believes in you, and yeah, is very defensive of you. And then there's also a character that uh yeah, you kind of have to be that person for, where you have to inspire them to stand up for themselves and see their own self-worth. So I was like, okay, yeah, like this is something that like it's a very simplistic game in terms of mechanics, but the overall like world building was just so um it seems really simple as well, but it's like so relatable at the same time that
mm,
I think it was like it being so simple made it more concise for me to be able to apply it to where I'm at in my life and apply it to things and situations that I've personally experienced, and that tends to resonate with me a little bit more. So yeah, like if I guess describing it as like maybe slice of life, situations and character interactions, I tend to really like those a lot. Even if like the world around it is fantastical and magical and uh, things like that, the characters themselves are very much rooted in humanity. So yeah, those are the types of stories I really like.
oh no, definitely. Yeah, I could feel the same way for like Mass Effect, where I'm of course we're not in that age where we're going through different planets at high speeds and stuff like that, but you can relate to the character where it's like, oh, I have to make this choice. This is how I would choose in real life, or you know what I mean? Like you want to, when you have the choice of the I say the good, being the good dialogue or being the bad dialogue, you kind of want to self represent yourself, and this is what I would do in that situation, even though I'm not really in space,
No, I feel
and
it.
uh-huh. We what was I to say? We have and I was talking about the movies and video games I was talking about earlier with Spider-Man. How do you feel about like how things are with movies being video games and then video games being movies, like the space we're in right now? Because before, and you grew up with it, I'm sure, where when we had video game or movies as video games, they were pretty much crappy. I mean, some of them had exceptions. You had like pretty good Spider-Mans, and then just depending on if you liked the game or whatever for its charm. But typically, movie properties as video games typically failed, and then even back then, video games as movies typically failed. I know, I'm sure you've seen it a couple of times, maybe like with what are you maybe you grew up with the Resident Evil movie franchise. Not that it failed, but it kind of failed the gamer, critically speaking. So how do you feel about that, like right now, how it's going?
Yeah, you made a really good point. I like how you put it where the the video game IPs that or no, the comic book IPs that are adapted into video games. There are some really good examples of those, but when it's a comic book adapted into a movie that's then adapted into a video game, that's where it's like, okay, yeah, like something like might have, filtered it down a little weirdly there. um
Definitely.
yeah, so like for example, like there's been some really good Spawn video games, and I love Spawn. He's one of my favorite comic book
Mm.
characters. And I also like The Crow. Yeah, like the Crow comic book series that was adapted into a movie. But then the video game adapted from that movie. I think maybe it was adapted from the sequel. I forget. But yeah, that one, yeah, it was just a hard pass as far as like what like it felt like I think I understand now what is the issue. So when a comic book movie is adapted into a video game, that's clearly just them trying to, cash in on like the relevance of that IP in that moment while the movie's
Hmm.
out. So I think that's where like they sort of like outsource the game development to as like some like for lack of a better word, maybe inexperienced, maybe just the least expensive form of labor that they could get
The quickest.
to get the quickest game out like as soon
Hmm.
as the movie's out, and
Hmm.
that's where the that poor gaming experience comes from. But when it's just a standalone comic book IP adapted into a video game that doesn't necessarily have a movie tie-in, that those tend to be like those like really strong well playable or like well thought out in my opinion, and very much more like enjoyable because the game mechanics are so much more um finished and thought out and more focused on like the actual player experience as opposed to just having as many references from the movie into it as much as possible.
And then you were saying too, it's also not just a game studio that's doing it for a quick buck at a quick rate. It's a well established game studio, uh, handling the IP and really like taking their time to make sure they're making something that the fans will like, and even just game players I'm sure will like too, because I don't know, I've never played like a Spider-Man game, but I love Spider-Man. Like it looks good. I've just never cared to play Spider. I don't know.
Yeah,
It's weird.
same.
Yeah,
No, I
yeah.
get it. That's a really good example too, because like not just because like Insomniac is obviously they're the developers for Spyro, but they're also just well known industry wide for all just like that mark of quality.
Mhm.
Like
Very
you're
good.
more than certainly going to get a good game from them no matter what.
Mhm.
And yeah, like as far as I know, there haven't been any issues with having to meet a deadline for a game to be tied in with another product. And I think that's what builds that brand loyalty and trust to Insomniac as a brand, but also just how the care that they put into like the Spider-Man games has made it sort of like this again, it's just like this whole new pillar of excellence that all these other comic book movie adaptate or comic book IP adaptions for video games that they have to like aspire to next. So I like it because it's compelling other studios to kind of like hit these benchmarks, and even if they
Mhm.
don't hit the Insomniac Spider-Man, level of excellence, somewhere in the middle or somewhere, close enough to it, it's still pretty good. So, yeah, I would like say that that's a good thing.
No, absolutely. Yeah, it's making sure that it's proving right that a game can be adapted from a comic book or from a movie character. It's possible. A very good game, triple A, profitable and all that. It's possible. Like everyone else who didn't do it before just didn't care to do it or didn't do it right. So it does keep into that. And what do you think about like now with all the comic book movies? I'm not saying this is just me personally, and it looks like from what I see on the internet, people are getting kind of burned out on them. Do you think people will get like that with like look at the video game movies that are starting to come out? Like I didn't see the Super Mario Brothers. It looks good. I hear it's good, but Like now you have that, and then I just heard they're gonna do the Legend of Zelda live action. So do you think they're gonna kind of get burnt out there when hope I don't want it to happen, but do you think that's potentially what might happen, that people will get burnt out of these? I don't know, these I don't know, it's like they're taking these ideas that are already established and just bringing them to a new audience. But do you think people will get burned out on it, kind of like comic books or the movies?
Mm, I don't know if it's so I kind of go back and forth with using the term burnt out. It's for me, I guess like when I think of something that's burnt out, it's something that there's no more excitement to ignite um, that interest,
Mm-hmm.
where you feel like you already know what you're getting from the movie or like the TV show or adaptation before you even see it. So there's no excitement there. So maybe that is that sense of burnout where there's nothing else that excites you about and these about new stuff that comes out. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I tried to talk about that a little bit in the past, like on my channel. I only kind of scratched the surface, and I tried to outline some of um, the possibilities of like why the excitement level for the amount of uh, content that we're getting being so much higher than it's been in the past, but apathy sort of like going up as well. Um, it's that read that I have personally on just like my very limited scope of like the community that I have access to and interact with, where
Mm-hmm.
I kind of feel like there's frustration, and there's frustration because of the apathy part of it. They like these IPs that folks are like they grew up with, and they're very much like like connected to, like Mario and Legend of Zelda. Um, the idea of a cinematic universe of those characters doesn't necessarily, ignite that passion for what they have, that connection with those characters from all the way back in the day. So, like, I
Mm-hmm.
guess like full going back to like what I was saying about my formative years as a gamer and my idea of like what these games meant to me. Uh, I guess a good example would be like I don't necessarily feel like I need a cinematic universe of Spyro the Dragon and Crash Bandicoot. I'm sure like an animated universe, it has happened like on in animated form, like on a smaller scale, but I didn't need that to exist in order to um I guess grow my connection to those characters. In fact, I kind of feel weird that um I have this that I'm now kind of being pressured to like this content, unless
Mm-hmm.
or else I'm not a true fan. So I see like I feel like I'm seeing a lot of the different perspectives of people who are like I'm just exhausted of being um reminded of things that that I liked 20, 30 years ago. I still really like those things. I just would like to be allowed to like new things as well. and and I think that's what it comes down to. It's not just people just saying like, no, I don't want this. They're ruining my childhood, blah blah blah. Like I think underneath it, it's like, yeah, like it's this content can exist, but I don't feel like it is going to enhance my excitement for what I already love, and I don't
Mm-hmm.
necessarily feel like my appreciation for that IP is going to make me want to support these new products that are coming out that are related to it. Like I said, like I don't want like a cinematic universe of like every video game character that I love. I'm not going to object to it existing, and I hope other people like it, um but yeah, it's just like that feeling of like uh uh excess leading to like apathy, leading to like uh
Well,
frustration because you feel stagnant
well,
basically.
there's all like the way you're putting it. It sounds to me there's all risk and no reward. Like there's only if it does succeed, it really doesn't. It just succeeds to not fail it. You know?
Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
like the Super Mario Bros movie, I'm stoked that it, earned $1 billion. I'm stoked that Barbie made $1 billion. I loved both
Mhm.
those movies. And yeah, if there's more movies to come, great. But the product, or sorry, not product, I don't want to talk about it, the films as if they're just like packaged, goods, even though they
Mhm.
kind of are. But
Yeah.
basically, I'm saying like, yeah, the Super Mario Bros. Movie as like a standalone film story arc, I'm content with that. If like we don't get anything else, that's totally fine. Same with the Barbie movie. I had a full character arc that I'm content with. That I don't feel the need to have supplemental TV shows and films to further expand my appreciation for it. The appreciation is there. I don't feel like it's going to go away anytime soon, but I don't think that further supplementary, like, stories and characters and things like that are going to expand that appreciation. In fact, it might lead me to feeling exhausted from seeing it and being reminded of it so much.
Mhm.
I think what made it special was because it was like that one moment in time that really resonated with me, and then I can walk away carrying it with me from there. But being constantly reminded of like that resonance, it's like, okay, yeah, now it's starting to lose its meaning, it's starting to dissipate into the ether, and now I'm just annoyed with these characters now. So now
Mhm.
it's just kind of defeating the purpose, of using nostalgia to market to people. It's like exhausting them more than anything.
Oh yeah, especially to, like you said, true fans that really did, like it or appreciate what it was originally, and then to just milk it for all that it's worth. It's like, oh, why did I even like it in the first place? I'm forgetting now, you know.
Yeah, totally.
And I lastly, I know I saw one of your videos. Loved it about physical, uh edition. They call it physical editions of video games, as if it's special now. It is though. But now, like, games, everything's digital now. It's almost like we care about just the convenience of downloading something, or the speed of getting it, and the lack of a physical game or physical edition. Do you think, like, they're just going to completely go away, the whole, like, physical game aspect?
Yeah, I think that there is going to be a point where physical media is just going to be for very limited release. Um, and I think a lot of products are just going to default to digital only. It really sucks because I have memories of like PC games still coming out on discs and folks coming into stores with the intention to buy them just to have them, even if like, you install the game from the disc and then you store away the disc for the rest of, of time. Like there was just, I guess I'm kind of on the fence. Like if you had asked me like maybe a year or two ago, I'd be like clutching my pearls, saying like, no, not my physical media. But now I'm just like, um, I feel like there's enough um for me personally. There's so many games that are out currently that are on physical media that I would never in my lifetime have enough time to play anyway. So any additional games that come out, whether it be like digital or physical, whatever, like I'm just happy that access exists for that content, and I would hope that for um games and other media that is on physical media is also going to be available in perpetuity in the future, whether it be digital or physical as well. So I think ultimately it does kind of suck because, yeah, I'm always kind of thinking, well, what if, the internet dies or my hard drive dies, and where am I going to access my games, or my storage on my SD card corrupts, blah 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 blah. All these
Mhm.
things are why I kind of default to physical games, but at the same time, I'm like, well, that's why backups exist. Like
Mhm.
there's not going to be a point where, okay, yeah, maybe like one or two games are like lost in time, or and I can't access them again. That would really suck. At least we have like proof that game exists, hopefully existed at one point. But again, like for me, being a gamer and not necessarily like a historian, I am like, okay, yeah, that sucks. I can't lament that, that handful of games that was just, forgotten in time or we lost, because at the end of the day, I just want to be able to experience more games while I'm still here. Like, and that's what I have the most interest in is uh, just, playing new games and or being able to experience as many games as I can that I really enjoy. So yeah, I guess like that's the long version of the story, where I was trying to explain that even though like I am sad that physical media is getting phased out, ultimately if it's accessible digitally, that's great. And then there's so many games out in the world already that I personally wouldn't lament losing a few in time, or if I have like save files that get corrupted or hard drives full of games that gets corrupted. Yeah, like there are backups, and then there's a bunch of other games to play in the meantime.
You know, and I remember. Well, you're around the same, growing up at the same time when digital first came out. I remember when it first came out that the argument, and I might have read this in an Xbox magazine or something, that what if, since we're not using physical media, it'll be cheaper because it's just downloading the file. And I was like, well, that makes, in my head back then, that makes sense because, whenever it would show you the price of publishing a game, and there's a certain percentage where they have to make it into physical discs, print it up, blah, blah, blah. And now, like, digital games are the same price as physical games. I'm like, well, what the heck is this? I thought we were going to save money because you're not actually making it, into a physical edition. And I guess that's where it kind of bugs me, is that it's going straight from whatever you or game company to the consumer, minus let's say if you're on the app store or something, the app store gets the fees, or Steam, but it's more direct. And for some reason we're paying the same, if not more now. Geez.
Yeah, yeah, you make a really good point. And like on top of that, physical games tend to go on sale a lot more frequently than the digital versions. Like,
Hmm.
and there are other like brick and mortar reasons why that happens, like with Target and Best Buy, for example. Like, I don't
Hmm.
want to get too much into that, but as far as like what you were saying about digital, supposedly like was supposed to bring in less expensive games. Yeah, it's frustrating because even though they're not paying like, the retailer percentage, they might be paying the download platform like you said, but they're getting a lot, like these game studios and developers are getting a lot more money than they are by not having to pay for physical media or real retailer, real estate and stuff. So,
Hmm.
yeah, like it it is another reason why I'm like, well, why would I pay $60 for a digital key if I can just, wait till Black Friday and get this game for like $40 physical at Best Buy.
Uh-huh.
So I am saying like this is not going to be forever. This is probably going to last maybe a good 1 to 2 more years where I can say this. So this is going to be like I'm aging this video terribly by saying this. That I'm still like hanging on to that. Yes, holiday sales for physical media, but um I do know on the immediate horizon like those days are numbered.
And there's pros and cons. I know we can look at the whole, this helps like smaller studios because they couldn't really get themselves like physical editions of games, so they could put it straight to the consumer, like those small independent studios, da da da. But I don't know. I'm thinking more of a where the bigger scale, where you have, look at what they just announced. And I don't know if it's a rumor, but the new Grand Theft Auto is supposed to be budgeted at $1 to $2 billion, and I'm like, cheese and crackers. How do you like? How much is that game gonna be? It's like rumored that it's gonna cost like $180 for the base game or something. Like, jeez.
Oh my gosh, that is. That's wild. Okay, like here's a question for you. So like would
Hmm.
you rather just pay up front for like a full game experience with all the DLC, all the like, payables up front, but that's the only way you can buy the game, or would you rather have them nickel and dime you and then you can like and then you have to like just pay over time? Like which was is your preference?
I think it would depend on the game, but like let's say the most recent Mortal Kombat that just came out, I bought the edition with all the like already the DLC before they announced it, you know. So you're basically getting all the combat packs. I think I paid like 120 or 110 or 120 for it, and it comes with all future foreseeable DLC potentially, you know. I mean, something could happen that it doesn't guarantee it. But yeah, I think if it was a game that I really like wanted to play or like to, I guess I would have no argument. But that there's some arguments like Call of Duty maybe where it's like, what, I gotta pay this to like when they had where you had to buy Modern Warfare to play the classic Modern Warfare 2 or something. I can't remember how it was specifically, but I know it was like I have to buy the new game to get the older game. That's the only way I could get it. You know, it's kind of like nah, I don't know. it's it just
Hmm.
depends. It's the scenario, I guess. You know.
I mean, I've noticed I'm drawing a blank on other games that do this as well. Oh, access to the previous version of the game, but you have to buy the new version first.
Well,
Uh,
man, I can't remember what modern. It was like you got Modern War or you got classic Modern Warfare 2 remastered, but you had to buy like the newest Modern Warfare game that came out. Like that was the only way you could get that one in a. It was in the game, like in a code or something. I
and
can't
then it
recall.
would be funny if Modern Warfare 2 remastered ended up being a lot more popular than the game you had to buy
Well,
in order to
yeah,
play it.
that's what people wanted to play because they wanted to go back to those old maps with like new matchmaking and stuff. You know what I mean? Like they're like, oh man, because I don't know if you grew up with Modern Warfare 2. Like I didn't really like it at first, but then my brother got me really into it, and that was fun as heck. That one, like, that was probably the what is it, the temple that built the entire Modern Warfare, like why it still exists. It's so popular because that one was so good, you know. But yeah, I feel like that's how a lot of games are now, where oh, you have to buy, this to get the rest of this, and it would just depend. I'm not a fan of Grand Theft Auto. I just never got into it, so I couldn't see myself paying $100 and something for the base game or any other DLC that may be promised. But you know,
Oh right, yeah, I forgot. Like that would be another good example of um a video game adapted into a movie. I know we were talking about how some of those can be hit or miss, but I think it's when they try to co-op a movie that is based on a comic book or video game into another video game. That's where, it kind of gets lost in the sauce. But if it just goes from um like a standalone GTA movie and it's not necessarily like tied into any other product releases, or if they can find a way to make it so that it is uh, I don't know if they want to adapt every GTA into its own movie like San Andreas or Vice City. Although that would be really cool. Um, if they were to do that as like each as a standalone movie, I wouldn't object to it. I would definitely watch it. I just feel like maybe if they were going to make it so that it is plausible that it would occur in that universe, the GTA universe of like games, like
hmm
like its own unique story.
hmm
Yeah, I would be down for that too, which I think that they may actually go for, because like I didn't ever watch any of the Resident Evil movies, but were they necessarily one-to-one adaptations of any of the games, or were they just individual stories?
they were like their own thing, but they took like liberties from the games. Like, oh, there's that character. That's how he's in here. But the main character was that Mila Jovovich. I can't remember what her name was in that movie, but she was like her name was Alice. She was like made up. character in that movie, and then they built the universe around her. And so I know in some videos it's like, or some of the movies it was like, oh, there's Wesker, or oh, there's Chris Redfield or Jill Valentine. So like they threw them in there as more like Easter eggs rather than like uh actual to the game story, because you could have probably just adapted Resident Evil Part 1 word for word script, like and then like shot for shot and then make a good movie. But they took their own liberties. And then even like more so, like I don't know if you saw the Resident Evil TV series that just came out or that had
No.
recently come out. It was weird on Netflix, as well as Twisted Metal that they did on Peacock, which they just, I don't know, they just took their own liberties. And it's strange. It's not bad, but it's not, if you're gonna go there expecting to see like, oh, this is just like the video game, this is cool in real life. It's not. It's just strange.
I guess that's where Last of Us is sort of improving on the
Mm.
let's just do what's in the game and not try to deviate too much. Um
Last of Us
and
did it right.
yeah.
They did it right.
Yeah, I enjoyed it, and I never played Last of Us,
Me too.
and
I never played it.
there, I was able to follow the story just fine, even though I'm not familiar with the story of the source material. So, yeah, now that I'm talking about it, originally I was like, well, if they were to make a GTA movie, I don't know how they would want to make either a standalone story or try to adapt existing stories. But I guess if since I mentioned Last of Us and how successful that is compared to the other examples that we talked about, maybe it is, yeah, like the source material is good enough. Like, the story in GTA is cinematic and, the characters are great. Just find, the actors for it and the
Hmm.
story's already there and the dialogue's there too. So, yeah, all you have to do is just, put it in live action.
Hmm. Exactly. It's already such a good story. You can literally copy it word for word. But well, not literally, but I'm saying like just copy the paper, copy my work and get it done, and it'd be great. You know what I mean?
Yep.
It's already a good story, the source material. But yeah, no, exactly. I that's just the way I feel, especially with that. And then yeah, physical media. I'm worried about it, like you said, but that's just the way things are gonna go now. Especially people want it now, convenience and all that. But no, it was great. I appreciate your time today talking about video games. Sure, we could talk about other stuff like movies. I don't know if you watch anime. I'm trying to get more into anime for the sake of my
Same.
niece.
Yeah, me too. And then I am following a lot more comic book movie news and other, film news as well because of my friends. I enjoy talking about it with them. I know we have a lot of uh colleagues in the film discussion space as well, so I'm trying to keep up with them too by watching all this content. So, yeah,
Oh
same
yeah,
boat.
no, there it's yeah, it's fun. It's like never ending. But it's fun. And no, I really liked talking with you today. You were great. I hope to talk to you again. No, it was a lot of fun reliving. Like we're in the same space pretty much with video games. It's like, oh shit, cool.
No,
That's
it's,
how it
it's
was.
awesome. Thank you again so much for inviting me. This was a lot of fun.
No, it was a lot of fun anytime. And yeah, we'll definitely stay in touch and have you on. And yeah, where can they find you at? I'm sure I'll put all your links up and stuff like that. But I know you have on your YouTube channel. And
Yeah, thank you so much. So, I think I made it pretty streamlined for folks to just, look me up at Glimmering Harpy. That is where you can find my Twitter, YouTube, and other platforms that I have content on, like TikTok, for example. I'm on Threads, but the main platforms are going to be YouTube and Twitter. I'm on Twitter a lot, so yeah, come find me there.
same here. No, it's great. Yeah, I'll make sure to put all that up here in the screen and then the description. But yeah, no, it was real fun. Thank you for talking with you today. It was real fun talking to you today. Thank you so much, and I'm glad we found the time to do this. It was great.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, no, and that's a wrap. Everyone, take care. Bye.